Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to the Pipeline Podcast, episode 91. I'm your host today, Daren Mcclimans, and we're joined by the one, the only, the fabulous, the amazing Mr. Joypad, Jake, returning to us. How's it going, Jake?
It's doing great. Daren, how are you? Thank you for having me on again.
I am good. Thank you for being here. Like we were saying prior, you were like a last minute, can you please help me?
You know what? And my deal was, as long as you had enough M&Ms at the gate, I was good to go.
Sure. You know what? I did forget those, but I'll put it on your. You can put it on my bill. So maybe next time I'll have them ready. Yeah.
It'll go on your tab, not mine.
Yep. That's how that works. You actually have to pay for it yourself, but you can have them.
Sick new intro, by the way.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. Yeah. No. Yeah. So for this week's episode, and I always try to think of like some fun, theme-worthy things we could talk about on these episodes. It's like, all right, Mother's Day was last month. I almost said last year. Of course, it was last year. Mother's Day was last month. Father's Day is this month. And I was like, let's combine those two and talk about some of our favorite fictional parents. And it's something I was kind of thinking about throughout the week. And I was like, you know what? I actually think parents are something we don't really think about, but like they're kind of like the gateway of almost any fictional story. Like without the parents, you wouldn't have any of your like lead like protagonists. And I think it's always interesting to see where the characters that we love, where did they come from? Where did they start? How did they get raised? So I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting for that one smug individual in the comments to go, Batman did it without his parents.
Oh.
Just waiting for that.
Thomas Wayne, my number one choice. Oh boy. And maybe some of these parents didn't make it that long. So maybe there is some of that conversation. So we will definitely see how it goes.
Speaking of.
Yeah, that's poor Batman. He maybe if he had a little bit more love, maybe he could have turned out a little different.
Hey, man, at least he has Alfred. Probably go insane without him.
I mean, we could have put Alfred. Alfred's one hell of a parent. Hell yeah. Shout out to my boy Alfred.
Honorable mentions. There we go.
Yeah, honorable mentions. Actually, just a real, we have some stuff that we're going to be going into way before that. But the one I didn't put on my list, I was like, Joe West. I really want to put Joe West on my list. And he just missed my list. But shout out to that man. But how have you been, man? How has it been going?
Pretty good. I've been getting a lot of stuff done, here. Not as much as I would have liked to on the YouTube side of things, but hopefully that's going to be kind of changing here within this next week after Father's Day. I've got a lot lined up, but it's one of those things where you have a lot kind of ready to go and ready to do it. You just need to dedicate like a full day's worth of editing all that junk together. That's what I haven't given myself yet.
Sure. I'm so bad about just like recording and it's like, oh, let's put that up. And then there's me being like, why isn't it getting views? It's like, yeah, because you needed to edit it, dumbo. Like that's why people aren't watching it. But like, I don't know, there's that nice, like, you're done. All right, move on. But no, I get it. It's hard to be like, yes, let's actually put forth the effort and edit it, make it worth it. Now we've been we often will start our shows by talking about things that we've been watching recently. Is there any piece of media, movie, TV show, video game, book, anything that you've been kind of like consuming recently that you would like to talk about?
So this is something I've been consuming for the first time. It's things I've seen a number of times, but recently I've just been I've been kind of on this DC Timverse binge, I guess if you want to call it, like everything from BTAS all the way through Justice League Unlimited. I've been just reconsuming all that again because that's one of my favorite tellings of the DC universe, and it's a little bit sad to see, there was a lot of simplicity to it back then. They often told stories that hit harder when they weren't trying to shove it in your face. Yeah. And I just kind of miss how it was then compared to now. So reliving some of those good days. And that's also one of my favorite interpretations of this side note. That's my favorite, probably still, interpretations of both Wally and John was that animated series because they were the Lantern and Flash that I grew up on. So I just love seeing those versions of those characters again. And there's still some good ones in the comics. they have the thing where Wally's kind of taking up the lead mantle of the Flash again in comics, which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been kind of reconsuming that again, and it's it's bringing me back to the childhood days of watching Batman, Superman, and then Justice League, just all through Saturday mornings as a kid.
That's amazing.
How
Yeah,
about
I mean,
you?
like that. I mean, just that Justice League show. Those are still some of my like. When I think of DC, that's probably the universe I think of first.
Yeah,
Not always my favorite version. Like, there's some versions I might like a little bit better than some of their versions. But like when I think of DC and I think of just how they established like the DC universe and kind of what that meant. Yeah, I mean, like I think of that Superman first. I think of like Kevin Conroy Batman, the Green Lantern, the Flash. Like those are all the versions of the characters I think of first. So yeah, they definitely did a great job, and it sounds like a nice way to spend this time while there's a severe lacking of DC content right now.
yeah,
So there is.
yeah. They're going through kind of their hard reboot.
Yeah. Starting in the fall though, like fall,
Yeah.
we have like Superman and Lois. We'll have the Caped Crusader. Well, that comes out August, so close to fall.
Yeah, it's
We have
August.
Joker 2. We got Penguin. So like we're getting some stuff, but we just gotta wait through this very very dry period at the moment. In terms of things I'm watching, yesterday I did a double feature in the movies. I did Garfield, which was not good. I actually thought it was really. It was like
I've heard mixed things.
I didn't love it. I mean, it's not bad. It's fine. Like I bet if you put a kid there, they'll have fun with it. But I didn't think it was great. And then I did If, which was also meant for kids, which I actually thought was really fun. I thought I was like, all right, yeah, like that felt like a movie I would have adored when I was like 10. Like that's a movie like I would have loved, and it's still a pretty good time now. Like acting's kind of cringy, and the script isn't like amazing. Like it's whatever. But you don't know. I thought it was a really good time. And my main accomplishment of the week is I don't know if you've seen the show, and it's totally okay if you haven't. I finally finished The Walking Dead, that 11 season long journey. I'm free of the main show at least. I got like 15 spinoffs or whatever the heck they're on, but like I think it was like really because I started it back in like 2022 is when I officially started it.
Oh, okay.
And then I took a really long break, and then in like February I was like, all right. It was like I was on season 3 and I was like, all right, I'm gonna finish the show. I'm gonna try to finish the show this year, and I finally did it, and I'm free and I'm happy at last.
See, I've taken an even longer break because I watched. I think it was the first 3 or 4 seasons, whichever season had the finale where they had that giant fight in the prison yard. That's the last full season I finished.
Yeah, that was.
And then 3, I think.
4, 3, 4, one of the two.
One of those two. Yeah. But I started the next season after that, and I immediately started to notice the decline. I'm like, I don't want this, and that was 2013. So I haven't watched it since then. I haven't watched an episode since then.
It's one of those situations where I really enjoyed the show pretty much from start to finish, but it's just like the same with all those CW shows. When you have a show that goes that long, you have those hills and valleys, or be like, oh, this is really good. Oh wait, no, it's not, but it's good again. Wait, it's not. So it's just that up and down. You're just going through that roller coaster. But it's just one of those like iconic TV shows that I'm glad I can say I've now seen. Like, all right, I've seen this show that everyone has talked about for years. So that's cool. And then, of course, there's spinoffs that I'll have to catch up on. Because, like, what they did is, like, when they ended the show, it felt less of, like, an ending of the show and more about, okay, this is bye for now, and here's these 3 new spinoffs that you're going to have to watch if you want to continue these characters' journeys. So...
Yeah, that's kind of what they did with the Vampire Diaries, too, whenever that ended. They said, all right, now we're moving
origins,
on to originals. Now we're moving on to, Legacies. And it just makes you wonder how long they're going to continue that universe. I don't know if there's anything past Legacies, because I admittedly haven't seen... I mean, I watched a little bit of that universe, but again, like Walking Dead, it's not one of those things that I committed long-term to.
Sure. No, I think that was one of the same thing as the Arrowverse, where Legacy was canceled due to the changing of leaderships, and that was one of those situations where it's like I didn't watch it, but I felt bad for the fans that had like committed 10 plus years to that universe, and what did they get out of it? Not much, because they just took it away from them. So that really sucks.
Yeah.
Sure said there wasn't really anything past Legacies. Yeah, that's what I heard. Okay. But maybe someday there will be. Like maybe some other streaming service will be like, hey, here's a whatever.
Here's this.
Sure.
Yeah.
People love that kind of stuff. Sherry said, I'm really happy DC animation is having a renaissance again. I suppose it kind of is in a different kind of way, right? I guess with
Yeah.
My Adventures is kind of doing their thing. The Caped Crusaders coming out soon, which I'm excited for. I'm kind of nervous for like the DC animated side of things, to be honest, though, because I'll be honest, I have not kept up with like the Tomorrowverse or anything like that. Like
Yeah, I mean that's been very, very hit and miss,
Yeah.
and I will say they rushed into Crisis on Infinite Earths way too fast. Because when that first movie brought in, you didn't even really have an established Justice League yet, and then with Part 2 being very middling, I'm a little bit nervous for Part 3. I mean, I hope it ends up good, and I'm also the one thing about Part 3 that did give me at least a little bit of a good feeling, and this is kind of external from the overall story, is whenever they said that Crisis Part 3 was one of the final projects that Kevin Conroy had recorded lines for, it kind of washed the bad taste of the Suicide Squad game out of my mouth, thinking that was going to be his final performance. So after I heard that, it's like, okay, we're going back to our roots here. He's playing his Timverse Batman again. So I feel a little bit better now.
and yeah, like even if his stuff in there, or even if those movies aren't great, it is cool that he's going back to kind of where he began for like what it seems like I think that was his first role as Batman, right? Was like the animated series. Yeah. So it's cool that he was able to come full circle with his performance. But yeah, I'm nervous. Like I'm very excited for what James Gunn is doing, but I am nervous about the animation side of things. Like they announced the like Watchmen setup movies. I was like, is that going to be kind of the final ish of this kind of side of like the DC animated stuff? So we'll wait and see, I guess. Yeah. I do want to show off really quickly. Whenever I see like Arrowverse merch like out and about, I have to buy it. I have to pick it up. So I did. I found myself a Malcolm Merlin Funko.
Okay.
And I don't know. I feel like these are ones I should have picked up years ago, but I did get myself a Ray Palmer one as well.
Nice.
So
yeah.
I have to, when I see them, I'm like, well, I have to get them. I don't have these ones. I gotta get them.
Yeah, and that glass case up there, I don't know how well you can see it, but right up there on the top of it, I've got Grant's Flash from season 4, and then I've got John Wesley Shipp's Flash in the 90s. And then in that top shelf, it's Green Arrow, Deathstroke, Black Canary, and Atom, all from Arrowverse.
Oh, hell yeah.
So yeah, they're not Funkos, but they're like that Icon Heroes brand where the black statue's got that little level base. They're really nice looking, actually. And the only ones that I have left to get to complete that line are I would need Supergirl, Reverse Flash, and probably the rarest one of these to find is Black Lightning. That one is super hard to find. But, I'm a collector, so I dig where I can.
Amazing. Yeah, I've got like a lot of the Arrowverse Funko stuff that they made, but not all of it. Like some of it's, I really want to get some of those early Arrow ones that are really hard to get. Just $500. It's like, oh my gosh.
And there are some of them, like there was a Frost one, I think, that was a Comic-Con exclusive. So I don't know how much third-party vendors will be selling that for now.
I have that one, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've got like 4 or 5 Funkos like kind of scattered around this, but not one of them are Arrowverse related, which
fair.
It's always weird whenever you're going, whenever you afford yourself that chance to go on a little spree. I saw several Arrowverse Funkos at this store that I went to, and I didn't get one because there was a Zoom one that I saw there. I'm like, hey, that one looks really cool, but I didn't end up getting it.
Yeah.
Instead, and the one I got instead of Zoom, this isn't DC related. Well, I guess it kind of is because he appeared in DC projects. That's the one I got instead.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite one.
I don't got Zoom or Thawne. I got Godspeed though.
They made a Funko of him?
Yeah, they did.
Oh,
it was
cool.
It was that season. I think it was that season 8 set where they did. It was Flash. It was Bloodwork. It was Godspeed, and then it was Killer Frost. I think so.
Wait, it's a season 8 set?
Or maybe it was a season 7 set. I don't know, or 6?
Well,
6 set.
Well, it sounds like it's a merger of those two things.
Yeah.
They have Bloodwork in 6, and Godspeed, well, I guess he technically did appear in 6 once.
I guess it was probably a season 7 set, right? When they just kind of threw Bloodwork in there because recency biased, I guess. I don't know. Anywho.
I forgot about that. I honestly forgot when they did that. The only Bloodwork appearance that that remained in my mind past Crisis was when he came back in the final season.
Yeah.
It was the only one that remained.
Right.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to get my hands on more Funkos. And there's an old school line of like Arrowverse little collectibles. I think they stopped making them around, it would have been like 27 or 2016, 2017. So like Arrow season 5, Flash season 3, that kind of time. I think that's when they stopped, but they have everything up to then. Like they have, Green Arrow, the Flash, the Legends, Vixen, Constantine, a bunch of those. So that's a line I'm looking at completing. But like I just said, it's one of those that's harder to come by now that era in DC is kind of over. Yeah. So you have to find them at third parties who are definitely going to try and charge you a lot more.
Yeah. I think that Flash set may have been one of that was either the last one they did or the Black Lightning set that they did, which I bought that immediately when they came out. I was like, well, and I was hoping like, oh, maybe this is going to spark like a new set of DC ones.
Yeah.
And it did. Like I was hoping like maybe when Supergirl ends, maybe they'll do a set for Supergirl or even Flash or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like maybe now, like recently they've done Doom Patrol ones and they did Titans ones. So I was like, maybe Superman and Lois could do a set. Like I'd buy the hell out of that.
That's what I'm hoping for that Icon Heroes set that I've got out there, because when they came out and they did one for John Wesley Shipp's Flash, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. I'm like, do you think we can maybe get a Superman one for that now? Because if we had one of Tyler's Superman from that,
oh my gosh,
if I had one to kind of like head this little group up here, that'd be a beautiful centerpiece. So I'm getting into collector mode.
I'd love that. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we're going to be jumping into some of our big news stories of the week. Like we're saying prior, it was kind of a slow news week. Like usually like the like day prior to us doing the show, and I was like, I go through all my things and I'm like, what's come out this week? And I was really struggling. I was like, there has not been much. Thank the Lord of the big news story that came out yesterday, because I didn't have nothing. So thank God that came out.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything there.
Yeah. But first up, we have a news story, a couple of news stories, I guess, we kind of put them together that came out today. Cartoon Network, several upcoming Cartoon Network nostalgic shows were unveiled today. So did you see any of these announcements that ended up coming out?
I saw a couple of them, and I didn't look too far past it, but
sure.
This is going to be, a line that a lot of people will want to fall back on, just using nostalgia as like a crutch. But, I would kind of dismiss that because, I'm going to use this as a recent example. Look at X-Men 97. There's a lot of nostalgia for the people who grew up with it, like myself, but there was also a lot of rich storytelling and new stuff that they did with it. So it didn't just feel like they were trying to use, what worked back then to generate more buzz now. There's actually stories behind it. And if they do that with these, now they weren't necessarily as narrative focused. I'll admit that. Their original runs weren't really that focused on the narrative. There were some that were, but if they revive them now, I wonder if they're actually going to go in that direction, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like Cartoon Network is currently going through a phase where they're realizing how much they've really peaked in like their 90s and like the 2000s, and it feels like they are just kind of bringing back all those shows, which I am actually not opposed to. I don't think it's like a terrible idea. Now, I'm going to say up front, with the interesting thing about this, I do have kind of a couple things to say outside this. I didn't really watch much of Cartoon Network growing up. Like outside of the occasional like Ben 10 Bakugan, that was about it for me. So all of these shows here, really, I never watched. Like regular show, Adventure Time, all this kind of fun. I didn't really watch that growing up. I heard all my friends talk about it growing up, but a lot of these shows, Gumball, and a lot of these things that the people I went to school with were watching, I did not watch. Now the thing I really wanted from this panel that they were really hyping up is I was like, maybe this is when we finally get that Ben 10 announcement. That Ben 10 announcement I've been patiently waiting for since the reboot has ended, and it was not. That was very disappointing, especially when I look at like the roster of the rest of Cartoon Network's, like what they've been working on. Like you have Regular Show and Foster and Adventure Time and Powerpuff Girls and Total Drama, and like all of these shows that were kind of around Ben 10 when that was coming out. Even like Teen Titans Go, which is still on the air, like that's still kind of like remnant of an old show that they used to have. It's like I feel like Ben 10 would fit perfectly just in that large roster of shows that they were.
Yeah, it would have the same kind of tone.
any of these shows here, like, were any of these shows that you like grew up on, or are these any like we had the Adventure Time announcement, like that's getting a movie, like getting a prequel, Foster's getting a new show, regular show's getting a spinoff, like a lot of these kind of projects. Are there any of those that you're like super excited for?
Well, just kind of scrolling through the wiki here of the 2024 announcement and looking at all the ones included.
Sure.
The ones that I grew up with as far as Cartoon Network, it was Powerpuff Girls, it was Johnny Bravo, Grim Adventures, Dexter. That was kind of my side of Cartoon Network.
Sure.
And I will admit, just to throw a really weird one in there. I don't know if you ever watched this, but that Cow and Chicken series.
Yeah.
It made hardly any sense at all, and it was random, but it was also fun to watch. And then Freakazoid, also another one that I loved.
Sure.
Invader Zim, great show. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many good ones. That's the thing. Now there are a number of them that I looked at it and kind of dismissed as like, I don't know if I want to watch this. Not in terms of the announcement, but just growing up watching them.
Mm-hmm.
So it admittedly, ones like Johnny Test I was not admittedly into. That wasn't for me. I saw the appeal of things like Gumball and Adventure Time, but admittedly, I don't think it was for me either. But that's, I think, one of the great things about Cartoon Network is that they feel similar in the way that they're made, but the tones and the premises are so different that there's bound to be something there for everybody.
Sure, 100%. I feel like, again, I never really watched much of it, but it did seem like in the past couple of years they did kind of gear towards a more younger audience, which again, I never watched it when it was in its prime either, so I can't judge what they are now, because especially since I don't watch it. But I do wonder with this announcement if they maybe are going to try and lean more into, because I feel like most of the people that are going to be watching these shows aren't the children. Like, it doesn't seem like that would be the demo. Like, regular show, even like what I've seen in regular show, that never felt like a kid show to me. That always felt like, okay, you can put it in front of your kid, but like adults are not going to be the ones doing it. Like, I feel like it kind of has that same audience as like a Family Guy or like a Simpsons or something like that. So,
well, and it just made me think of this isn't a Cartoon Network show. I think it was Nickelodeon, but ones like Rocko's Modern Life, where it looks like it's a kid's show at base, but when you watch more than 10 minutes of it, you're like, oh, there's a lot of adult humor in here.
Yeah.
But it goes under the radar of kids watching it, so.
Yeah, Cartoon Network, I feel like, was always pretty good about that. Just being a little bit more mature. Like, as a kid, like, Cartoon Network was like, my parents would be like, you can't watch Cartoon Network. It's, they got adult stuff or whatever it was when I was growing up. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think we're also just kind of in this era of, like rebooting things and then asking the question, but who are we rebooting it for? And how do you adjust that when you make it? Like, you had the new iCarly show that came out a couple years ago, where it's like, well, now this isn't a kid show. This is aimed for, but like that always kind of felt weird to me, because I felt like they were trying to aim it for adults, but they weren't necessarily making the content. Like, it didn't feel like they were changing it enough for adults. Like, I felt like it's the same show, but they're swearing in there now because it's for adults or whatever. So I don't know.
I didn't, I didn't see, that show or its, or its revival show, but the gist that I got from it, it's like, okay, so I think they probably just, or at least my thought process was, they might have made it a little more mature to account for the kids that had grown up watching it were older now, so it might have fit in better with them. So it probably had a very niche audience, though. Because if someone was just coming into that as their first exposure, it probably would have been very weird.
Yeah. I actually really loved what X-Men was able to do with their newest comeback, where it felt like to me, it did not feel like a show that was being made for kids. It felt like it was made for the people who grew up in the 90s. But I think you'll be okay if I showed my 12-year-old nephew or whatever. I think they'll be okay as well. So I think maybe if they could somehow balance that line really well, I think just 90s and 2000s cartoons, not the bash on the current generation, because I think every generation thinks that their generation is the best. I try not to fall into that trap, but I do think that they were often made in the aspect of these are cartoons that kids can watch, but parents are also going to get a lot of enjoyment out of that. So hopefully they can kind of hit that mark.
That's a happy medium that I think would be good to find.
Yep. I'd love that. I also thought, I don't know if you saw this, like this Scooby Doo announcement that had come out, which I thought was one of the more interesting ones of this roundup. It's like an anime inspired Scooby Doo show. I was like, huh, that's interesting. I guess.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
different.
that was pretty much my exact response. I'm like, hey, that's cool. I don't know how much time I'm gonna give it, but it's different. Sorry, it is different. I think it's different in the right way as opposed to the last Scooby-Doo related product we got. I'm not going to mention that. But yeah, I think it's actually kind of different in the right way this time, to where you're not really having to question who it's for.
Yeah, no, it looks like, and again, I don't know the tone of the show. Like, I don't know if it's for young children or if it's for older. Like, I'm not sure. But it seems like they're going in the more creative route than Velma. And I didn't watch Velma. Like, this is an instance of me judging something without seeing it. But this is one of those rare instances where I feel like I probably can. I feel like I've seen enough of that show based on the trailers and the clips that people share on Twitter. I don't need to see that one, and I won't ever see that one.
No, yeah. I had a friend that got all they needed to know just from watching the pitch meeting, and they texted me. They said, "Is this really what it is?" I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and hopefully that one does a better job at honoring the legacy of Scooby-Doo, because that one, from what I saw, it just felt like, let's just put like the Velma label on it and call it a Scooby-Doo show. It felt like they didn't care about Scooby-Doo. Yeah.
Nope. And that's one of the things that's sad, I guess, to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, where they come out with these new products related to these IPs that have garnered fans for a long time, but they aren't interested in making stories about them anymore. They're going to call this a Scooby-Doo show, but it's not about Scooby. They're going to make these, I guess this is another example. They're going to make these Winnie the Pooh horror movies instead of telling a story about Winnie the Pooh as a character. It's like, okay, so this is what we're doing now?
I can see why. Like, I think it's very hard for someone to make original content now and make people invested in new stuff. Like, I can understand that, but then that's a double-edged sword, because then any people you are going to get to tune in are now going to hate the thing that you made. Halo got a lot of hate because people didn't like what they did with the Halo character, but it's very apparent they just wanted to make a fun sci-fi show, and the only way they could do that is by putting that Halo label on it. So.
Yeah. And that's another thing where I feel like you have to strike a happy medium. Like, pay respect to the source material, but make like your own creative story out of it, and and do something that doesn't really feel formulaic. If you want to go into technical terms here, you can do what's called remixing, where you take 10% of a base product. Like a base, story template or wherever it might be, and then twist your own remaining 90% into there. Yeah. So it's got a unique voice and it stands out, but not in the way you're like, look, we're trying to be different. Like, no, this is the story we're telling.
I'm a big fan of like spin-offs or like stories that take place in the world of something else. So I think that's that perfect happy medium where it's like, we're not telling that story again. This is our own thing. But you can say it's a part of this world, so people will still tune in. Like, you had that new Office show. Like, it was original. I haven't seen The Office, so I can't really stand that. But like, it was originally like a reboot of The Office, and people were like, "Boo!" And then they're like, "No, it just takes place in The Office." And they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm actually okay with that." Like, I feel like that's a good happy medium.
I don't know. That works for some franchises, but things like Harry Potter, for example, which I'm a little worried about how that's going to perform.
Well, that's a whole-on reboot, right? They're just redoing it again,
those
right?
Movies they had those Fantastic Beasts movies.
And Fantastic Beasts.
Wait, are they just doing like these different movies and just calling it Harry Potter movies? And I'm like, no, like these are all stories that are from an actual book in that universe, and they're just telling those. Taking a little bit more liberties with it, I'll admit, but it's still within that continuity. Now, like you said, for the whole reboot situation. I don't know what that's going to be, and I'm not going to bother speculating on that either, because just wait and see.
Yeah. I think a TV show can work for Harry Potter. I actually think that I in general, I think books work better in TV format than movies. I just think they're in a very tough spot when you're rebooting one of the most iconic film franchises of all time. Like, they're in for an uphill battle for sure.
Well, if they're throwing them in seasons of TV, you might actually be able to tell most of, if not the whole story that the book's told, instead of having to cut half of it out.
Yeah. for sure.
That'll definitely give them the benefit, especially as the books got longer. There was so much that was missing. Now they still did a pretty good job of telling the stories, I'll admit, but and I always did laugh so hard about the fact that they turned the second shortest book of that series into the longest movie, which it's like, okay. And then you could tell after that they started to, trim a little bit more things here and there. But they still ended up being good products. I still enjoy all those movies.
Sure. Same for the most part.
Yeah.
I still haven't finished them, so I can't say completely, but...
and that'll be your next accomplishment then, finishing those.
Oh man, I don't want to go on another tangent, but I watched them all. I started the last movie and I quit. I was like, I don't even know why. Like, I liked it. I was just like, I'll finish this later, and I never did. Never went back. So I need to go back at some point and finish.
They were on Max for a time. I don't know if they're streaming anywhere now.
I feel like they go from platform to platform. Like every month they're somewhere new. It was Paramount Plus for a while, and then it was Netflix, and then it was Max. I don't know. We'll see.
I think Hulu even had them.
Yeah, they go everywhere. They're in theaters some days. It's weird. Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has dropped its first trailer for upcoming series. Obviously, this being the spin-off series for the Mutant Mayhem movie that came out last summer. Did you watch this trailer? I guess first off, are you a fan of like the Ninja Turtles at all?
Oh, I love, the Turtles. The movie from the 90s is still one of my favorite Turtles interpretations. The cartoon that came before that. That's probably still my favorite era of Turtles content. I may be hitting myself again with that one, but also, even some of the ones like the 2003 cartoon. I watched that and I'm like, okay, this is different, but I can enjoy it. The movies with Megan Fox I didn't care so much for, but then they had a video game that came out like within the last 4 or 5 years. Shredder's Revenge, I think is what it's called. Which I'm like, okay, this reminds me of playing Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo a lot. So I got that feeling again, but kind of revitalized. Now, admittedly, I am slightly behind. I haven't seen Mutant Mayhem yet. I know I should. And but no, it is something that I am at least interested in, if nothing else, because I haven't seen I haven't seen the trailers in depth. But just looking at the art style alone was enough to interest me. I'm like, what? This is interesting. I just haven't had the time to sit down and watch it yet.
No, that's
it's
fair.
on my list.
Yeah, no, I was I won't say I adored it, but I actually had a really good time with this newest movie. I thought it was, in my opinion, a big step up from the Michael Bay movies. Like, I thought those were okay. Like, I enjoyed them when they came out. Like, I had enough fun with them, but I think in terms of turtle content, it was very easily at the bottom of my list. So I thought, I thought there was a real lacking of turtle content. Like, obviously we've had those Nick shows. Like, I liked the 2012 one. I didn't see The Rise, but I heard it was good. I just felt like in cinema there was a real lacking of turtle content. So when this came out, I was very excited. And then they announced the show. The whole pitch of it was like, we're going to get to see the turtles grow up. We're going to get this 2-season shows in between the first movie and then the second movie that they're making. And I thought that was a really fun idea to get with these actors actually being children, getting to actually see the turtles grow up along with these actors grow up with them. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Now, I will say I was very concerned. I think when you do streaming TV shows that go along with TV shows that go along with movies in general, it's always a risk. I think Disney has kind of trained me in this way. DreamWorks has definitely been training me in this way, where it's like, oh, cool, they're making this really cool TV show, and it's just like the most lowest budget thing possible. So I was very concerned with going into this one. What would it be like? And I shouldn't have distrusted Seth, because Seth has been a masterclass when it comes to superhero shows, and this one was no different. I haven't seen it yet, obviously, but from what I've seen from the trailer, I actually really like it, because obviously it's not the same art style. It doesn't have the same budget as it wouldn't, right? It's a TV show. Of course, they're not going to have the same budget. But I think they changed the art style for the show, and I think it kind of makes it its own. And the show kind of reminds me of almost like a graphic novel feeling. It kind of feels a bit, the way the characters move, the way the lighting, the budget there is still looks like it has an actual budget, like a streaming show compared to like Megamind or whatever they're doing. Even Disney Plus at times, where it's like, oh, this is not what I was expecting when you said they were giving this character a show. So I'm really excited for this. I'm very curious to see what all has in store. Not to spoil the movie, but the way the movie ends in a way where, like, what are you going to do with this TV show? Where are you going to take this thing? Because it ends in a way that no other turtle thing has ever ended. So I'm excited.
Okay. I have to get that off my watch list then.
It's a lot of fun. I think going into it, like, you have to kind of go into mind where, like, it is a little silly. Like, it's going for a different demographic than, like... But I kind of think that's cool, because you got these movies, and then we're also getting, like the Last Ronin movie, which is going to be going for a completely different demographic. So you can kind of have the children and the family, and then the 30, 40, 20-year-old over here that want, like, a bit darker of a turtle. So I think that's kind of cool.
And, and I can appreciate there being, a level of silliness to it, because if you were to go back and watch that, 1990 TMNT movie, those
movies are very silly. Yeah,
there's a lot of camp in there, clearly. But I also think they did a good job of balancing the tones, and it might be nostalgia talking, but like I could go back and see that movie still, because I just have an appreciation for movies, during that time, and maybe it was just my kind of humor, maybe that's why it clicked. But if anyone, if anyone watching hasn't seen that movie, it may be a little dated for you, but I would still recommend going back and giving it a watch.
Yeah, I love those first two 90s turtle movies.
Oh,
I love them. 3 was a bit too much for me, but I still enjoyed it. Like, it's like,
it was a little crazy, but I mean, it was still fun.
Yeah, I agree. They're like, turn your brain off and have fun. Like, and I think in terms of like the tone, I think Turtles works best when you have these lighthearted characters in a dark world. Like, I think that's a perfect balance. And I think the 90s did that very well. Like, it's a story about, like, kidnappings and, like, these children just going missing. And I feel like you throw these very silly creatures at the wall. And I think the turtles are usually inherently, they're silly. They are giant mutant turtles who know kung fu. Like, that's a silly concept. So, like...
a lot of hijinks there. So if you just mix it with that dark undertone, it ends up being a good mix. So you're not being, internally crushed by all the dark things going on. It's got like a good, coat of camp over it, I guess, if you want to call it.
And then even in like a story like The Last Ronin, it's so dark because you took away all that fun, right? You took away they're all dead, and like, oh, well, now I gotta deal with this thing. Like, I gotta. That's why it is so dark, because you took out all of that joy. So I think it works. Yeah.
As soon as I saw that they were basically going that direction, I said, "Okay."
Yeah, I'm excited. And they're doing a game and a movie, so I'm excited to see that story unfold.
Yeah. It'll be a good time to be a turtle fan.
It will. It will. Absolutely will be. All right. Next here, we got some DCU news. Michaela Hoover and Christopher McDonald have been cast as Cat Grant and Ron Trout for James Gunn's Superman movie. Each week we got a new casting. It feels like every week we got a new casting for James Gunn's Superman. And all the jokes were like, there's a lot of characters in this movie. And just like, watch me. Just keep saying that. I'm going to keep adding people to this cast list.
Also, that's another thing. It's not like every character that's announced is going to have the same role size either. Like I imagine, like these characters here, I'd be surprised if they're in more than like 5 minutes.
Yep.
I mean, just think back to like, I'm just going to use this as an example. Think the 2002 Spider-Man movie. You look at that movie. There's a lot of named characters in there, but a lot of them have 2-3 minutes of screen time, maybe. But like, and they make an impact, but it's not like the movie's jam-packed either. So, your leads are going to get their focus. So, don't rush to just thinking the movie's bloated because there's a lot of characters in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, James Gunn said when they started filming and there was that giant cast list where like, these are the main characters of the movie. These are the main figures you'll be seeing in the movie. And since then, we've got like Martha Kent and Pa Kent and Kat and all these kind of cats. So I'd assume going from there, these are going to be very minor roles. But with that being said, I also I think especially with a character like Cat Grant, especially, I'm not as known about Ron. Like, I know of him, but I don't know super much about him. Where Cat Grant, though, I feel like is often not only just a Superman character, but a DC character. Like, I feel like she could pop in literally any project that's been announced so far, and it would make sense relatively outside of like Creature Commandos or whatever it may be. Like, pretty much, she's a reporter, so she's going to be showing up in Batman, in Green Lanterns, and Booster Gold, whatever you want it to be. So I'm happy that Cat's in here. I'm excited Ron's in here. I'm excited that we're getting this, like, the Daily Planet, and there seems to be a real focus on the Daily Planet. So I think that's really cool. And to see the element that has in this movie.
And, you know, I will give CW this. I think because of the way Cat Grant was done in Supergirl, she's gotten a little bit more of the, you know, the thing where people are able to recognize her more. You know, even though that, you know, show didn't have the biggest audience, it still had good ratings for a time. And, you know, she was definitely a part of that show that people remember the most.
Yeah.
It's because of, like, the way the character's mannerisms were. And, you know, like, as far as the whole thing with Ron Troop, you know, just being, I mean, I don't know if they're going to give him any more than just being, you know, the what is it? The husband of Lucy, you know, the brother-in-law Lois. I don't know if they're going to do any more than just that, or if he's just going to play, you know, like a very small size role. Again, using that Spider-Man movie as a reference to something like Robbie Robertson or Hoffman in those. You know, they were in there for like this little small amount of time, but you still the characters still made an impact. You still remembered them. So I imagine that's what these two's roles are going to be kind of similar to. And, you know, I guess if we want to go into it, I was about to say maybe give Cat Grant kind of a similar sort of role that they gave to Elizabeth Banks, Betty Brant in those movies. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the kind of role that she has. But, you know, this is again a thing where I don't think you need to feel worried that there's a big number of characters in there.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I know, like, could it feel bloated? 100% it could, but, like, I mean, even look at the Guardians movies. Like, I feel like we don't talk about it because we only think of, like, the main bit, but there's often a huge cast when it comes to the Guardians movies. There's just a lot of these minor characters that are put in a second or two or three or whatever, just a couple minutes of screen time. So I'm not worried. I'm really not.
Well, here's this to think about too. You know, like if they just watch the movie on its own, you know, obviously, you know, it hasn't come out yet, but if they were to just watch it on its own without all the announcements that, you know, like A, B, C, D, E, like all these characters are going to be in there. If you just watched it on its own, would you really recognize it?
No.
You just think about that for a second. Yeah.
I think Superman has had I think we've done that with the MCU for a while, but I think Superman, more than any movie I've ever seen, it feels like we're watching James Gunn make the movie. Like, it feels like we are going step by step. And I think that's very smart in terms of marketing, where it feels like we're going along for that journey with him to be like, all right, we're writing. All right, we're casting. And I think they're smart how they're announcing it, because it's like each week we get a bit more of news, and that's just free marketing for the last. We still got it was announced a year and a half ago, and it feels like we've consistently got news since that announcement. We still got a year and a half left, and I bet he's still going to find ways to slowly milk out the information to us.
Year and a half? Actually, it's like a year.
It's like a year next month. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. We started and it was 2.5 years away, and now we're about a year away. So it's close. I'm excited. Yeah. Apparently, Fantastic Four is a year and a month away as well. So let's. Yeah. But that hasn't even started filming. So let's hope they can make that on track.
Let's because we need a good Fantastic Four portrayal.
Oh my gosh, that movie needs to be good. Yeah. Can you imagine if there's another bad Fantastic Four movie?
I mean, it wouldn't be that hard to imagine. Look at what there's been.
Yeah. I mean, I like the 2000 movies. They're charming.
I like the first of those 2000 movies. The second one, I'm not too hot on.
I think I like the second one more, actually. But I don't know. They're charming. They're like fun 2000 shut your brain off type movies. Now, Fantastic, I don't feel the same about.
No. No. I was about to say I have bad memories of that, but I'm pretty sure everybody who watched it does.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that came out in a time I was middle school, and I didn't really have like, oh, this is a good movie, this is a bad movie. And even then, I was like, this kind of sucks. I don't think I like this movie.
It's funny. Everybody has that one movie where they're like, wait, movies I'm looking forward to can be bad?
Yeah.
Everybody has that one.
I think I fell asleep. I fell asleep on the couch. I woke up and I was like, oh, I missed the movie. I guess I should restart it.
Oh, man. But yeah, going back to that Superman deal for a second, that's another movie that I feel like it's going to be good, and I just really hope it is because
Yeah,
I think Superman
needs to
needs a win in movies because
it needs to be good.
they've definitely been able to pick it up with TV with obviously Superman and Lois, but they've picked it up with animation because My Adventure Superman is doing great. But I'm going to catch some heat for this. I'm ready for it. I was honestly not that big a fan of Henry Cavill's portrayal. I thought he was a good actor. I really did. But just the way he was written, and just his whole surrounding world as Superman, I just really wasn't a fan of the way Zack Snyder did it. And it's more than the basic things where people are like, "Oh, he wasn't hopeful enough." It's like I agree with that, but there's also more to that statement. But I think we just need. I mean, it's been shown that you can mix Superman's immense optimism, his kind of happy demeanor, with a dark story, like again what Superman and Lois did. If you just see, like the way he is, kind of early on in that show, and even still to the point where we are now, like he offers a sense of the hope to the people in that city, but they also tell very serious stories there. So they found the way to kind of mix those two tones, and feel like, especially with what James Gunn has done recently, I think it's pretty evident that he can find a way to mix light and dark too. Because look at his most recent Guardians movie alone.
That broke me.
They found a way to mix light and dark.
Yeah, fully. I mean, we've talked. I've talked about on the show my opinions on Zack Snyder movies and Henry Cavill, and I think it, like, my problem wasn't Henry Cavill. To me, there was very apparent we're telling the story in a different way, and it felt like their final journey was supposed to be, we're ending in the way that we're supposed to be kind of starting, right? And I think eventually we're supposed to be going on this journey with Henry Cavill Superman, and if we got to go on that journey, honestly, I think I'd like it a lot more. The issue is we didn't get to go on that journey, so we're just kind of stuck with what we got, and it's just like, what we got, I was not a huge fan of, but I think Henry's like a good Superman. Like, I think him himself as the casting, like, I think he kills it. It's just
I didn't mind
not
him
my favorite
as an actor. And it also kind of sucks too for like the most exposure you got to that world. That long 4-hour movie, he's only in like 25 30 minutes of it. So you really didn't get to follow him either. That was more of Bruce's movie. Well, not more of Bruce's movie, because everybody had arcs in that movie. But so Henry just didn't get, he didn't get enough time, and B, he didn't get enough good material. And that's what it boils down to. Because it was kind of clear Snyder was just focused on deconstructing these characters instead of just telling them as they are. And it seems James Gunn is going in the complete opposite direction. It's like, no, these characters can still tell stories. You don't have to change the character, just tell a different story.
And again, I think a lot of that I think would have been okay if you would have had more time. Like, how many of our favorite Supermans have had multiple seasons or multiple movies or multiple whatever to leave their legacy? Outside of maybe Brandon Routh, most of them, we love Tom Welling, we love Tyler, we love Christopher Reeve, but they had time to grow as that character, to evolve as that character. I mean, Tom Welling had 10 seasons. It's tough. It is really, it's a situation that just sucked overall. And like, the DCU is not the DCEU. There's things I loved about that universe, but I'm so glad we're getting to start fresh again. It's like, finally we get these characters that we love.
And, going back to what you were saying too about the Supermans, even when Brandon Routh came back in Crisis, everybody was cheering. Everybody was cheering when his Superman came back.
He was very low on my Superman list, and he jumped to maybe my top 5. Like, I think he killed it.
Well, that was another situation like me for Henry, where I always loved Brandon's portrayal as Superman. I just had some other issues with that movie, but honestly, I would say beyond the whole plot line with the son, that's actually not that bad of a movie.
It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'll have to rewatch it, but
it's like you were talking about with Fantastic Four, like, you can tell it's 2000s and like in terms of production, but I think it's still a good time for the most part.
It's fun. I got my little Brandon Routh up there.
Oh, nice. I got Brandon Routh up there. He's just wearing an Iron Man suit.
Yeah. We got 3 Doves in the comments, and he says, in my personal opinion, as a Superman fan, there isn't a bad Superman, just a bad story. And even the Quest of Peach was still watchable, but Christopher Reeves is the best Superman. I think that's how I would agree with most superhero projects in general. Like, I feel like there's a few times where I'm like, this guy sucks. It's like, well, no, I just don't like the movie he was in, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, there's some heroes that unfortunately do, fall victim to bad stories. Not even just in movies, like in the comics too. And it's kind of clear. Sure. It's like, oh, this didn't really work. When they did the Force Quest Flash storyline in the comics, I'm like, okay, this was not good. So I didn't have any hope when they did it in the TV show, and it was still bad in the TV show.
Yeah.
So it's like there's times where it clearly doesn't work, but then you have something like Spider-Man One More Day, which is probably still the worst Spider-Man story I've ever read, and they use that story as the basis to make one of, if not the best Spider-Man movies, which is No Way Home. So
sure.
It's not fully at the fault of there always being a bad story. It just depends on how faithful are you to that story and how do you adapt it.
I mean, look at the X-Men movies. How many great actors we had in those X-Men movies? Where it's like,
yeah, that's still what's sad. There were so many people that were good in the roles.
Halle Bailey, the Cyclops actor, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he's amazing.
James Marsden, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank you.
Even the younger ones, like Sophie Turner's Jean Grey, I thought it was great. Ty Sheridan, Cyclops, amazing. I was there for it. Yeah. Especially McAvoy and Fassbender. Those guys killed it in the roles.
Yeah. I mean, I do actually like most of the movies they're in. I like First Class a lot, and I like Days of Future Past. Sorry. I was like, wait, what is it? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just, the ones out of those that I'm still not fans of, X-Men 3, I don't like that much. Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix. And I admit beyond all the really bad stuff they did with Deadpool, I don't even think the first Wolverine movie is that bad.
Oh, yeah?
Beyond all the bad Deadpool stuff, that stuff I can't defend. But beyond that, I don't think it's that bad of a movie.
I've been rewatching for the first time. It's been interesting. I know we got way off track here, but that's okay. Yeah. But I did Apocalypse, and I went into Apocalypse and going, oh man, I'm gonna hate this. I actually kind of liked Apocalypse, but what sucks about Apocalypse is I like everything that is an Apocalypse. Like Apocalypse sucks. But the side stuff, when it's just them kind of chilling at the mansion and they're just kind of doing whatever, I'm kind of vibing with this movie.
Yeah.
And then Apocalypse comes in, I was like, I'm bored as hell. I don't care about this plotline at all.
Yeah. Well, and what came with Apocalypse too, there were a lot of characters that they just butchered so badly. I mean, even though they made Olivia Munn look like Psylocke, she didn't act like her remotely. They screwed up now Angel for the second time. And just rushing into Archangel, that was a mess. I mean, he was already bad enough in X-Men 3. Then Bryan Singer said, you know what? We'll just go straight to Archangel. And they flubbed that up too. And I can't even remember this actress's name off the top of my head. I feel a little bit bad for that. But the second Storm, I really did not like that much either.
Yeah.
They had good castings for the most part. But I don't know, if you look at those original movies, especially looking at what they did with Rogue, that as a Rogue fan, that hurt me.
Yeah. 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 I'm excited for them to start fresh as well. Yeah. We went on
way off topic.
But that's okay. We have one final story here I do want to talk about, and it's a pretty big one. I'm really happy this news story came out this week. Because The Boys Season 5 has been announced to be the final season of the show. Now season 4 comes out tomorrow as we are live. Now first off, do you like The Boys? Is Boys a show that you enjoy?
So it's one that I definitely enjoy. So I will admit I'm not current with it. Because I am still I'm only a few episodes into season 3.
Okay.
But it was funny because whenever I watched the first season, I'm like, this was really entertaining to watch, but it was also very, very dark. And then I got told that just, oh wait, the books are a lot darker. I'm like, really? Yeah. That was pretty good. And then I started reading the books. I'm like, oh, okay. That's what they did. Which I'm not going to spoil anything for people who haven't read the books, but don't go into it thinking it's going to be fun. I mean, it is, but it's also very, it's aimed for a mature audience. But it's again, it's got fun aspects about it. And I enjoy, most of the characters there for the most part. little bit of redundancy there. I think from what I've seen so far in season 3, I already love what they've done with Jensen Ackles.
So good.
And I gotta say too, I know a lot of people, they say that Anthony Starr as Homelander is one of their favorites. I'd say Carl Urban's character might be edging it out for me, at least from what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know what? I mean, I already know Carl Urban's a really good actor, but I think this is one of his, roles that I can say he kind of owns. I mean, especially since, like this is the first time that these characters are brought to the spotlight like that.
I agree. I mean, there's a reason why those two are like the stars of the show, and like there's been kind of conversation about when the show is ending, and kind of the big discussion is like one that I've had is like, how long can you keep Homelander around? How long can you keep Butcher around? And they introduced kind of like a time limit for certain characters in the last season. So it was very much like, is there a world where maybe you don't have Butcher? Is there a world where you don't have Homelander? And that was kind of a concerning part for me. For like, I had two sides of it, where like one side I was like, I don't know how long you can keep the story of Homelander going, and then the other side of it being like, but I also don't want the show without Homelander. Like, I can't see how that would work. So it's like, I don't know what side I'm on. So I think this announcement kind of made me really happy when they've said, all right, season 5 is going to be the final season. We got 2 more coming. Season 4 comes out starting soon, and we're working on season 5, and it's going to finish off the story of Homelander and Butcher. And I was like, I think that's the perfect decision you can go with. I think 5 seasons for the most part is like the perfect amount a show can go. Like, I think 5-6 seasons is like that perfect number where it's a good amount, but also not too much. So I like it. I like it a lot. I'm happy.
Well, 5 seasons was also something that a lot of shows tried to reach, back then when cable was more prominent, because, like that was when you would get syndication. So that was really a big thing that not as many shows reach as you would think. Like a lot of shows are lucky if they make it past 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's, oh man, in this day of streaming, man, TV's tough. TV, I do miss the days of cable and like network television, and again, not all shows worked with the 20 episodes, and I think it's a little unrealistic to expect every show to fit that formula. But I even missed like a 13 episode season, or a 15 or a 16. Like, I think 13 and 15 are like that perfect sweet number for me. I think that's a perfect season length in my opinion.
The only thing I don't miss about the days of, the days when cable was really popular is whenever your DVR was full and you had to painfully decide what you could live without for a little bit until it came back.
Oh,
that's the one thing I don't miss.
Yeah, there's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to streaming and their TV shows. Like, in some ways, I'd argue it's never been better, right? It's like it's never had a look at shows like Stranger Things and Mandalorian and what they're able to do with the medium. And at the same time, I do miss a lot of what network was able to do with their TV shows. So I don't know. And also just in terms of like The Boys, they have also said that they are looking to also just keep expanding that world in different ways. Obviously, Gen V came out last year, and I personally love Gen V just as much as The Boys, if not even more. So I'm happy. Like, I'll be totally okay if Gen V just kind of becomes like the main show in terms of like the universe. They also have The Boys Mexico that they have been talking about, where that got greenlit last year. I think it was like late last year.
I think it was, I think so. Mm-hmm.
It was like November or something like that. And then obviously, they have said that they're looking to make new shows. I don't know if that's like Mexico, like if they're thinking about that show, or they're thinking that and something else as well. So I'm not sure, maybe. But I'd be interested to kind of see. I actually think 2 shows at a time is a pretty good number. Like, I think if you go more than 2 at a time, that's a bit too much. Like, when they announced the like Mexico show, I was like, 3 shows at once is a lot. So maybe they did that knowing it would be the final one. I don't know.
Yeah, they probably just. I've feeling they probably just did that because they were like, okay, so as soon as this one leaves, this one's just gonna fall right in its place.
100%. Yeah.
Is that a Justice League mug there? I saw.
It is a Justice League mug.
Oh,
yeah. Let me turn it around.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm happy about this news. I love when a show can just go out on its own terms. Boys is a show that never feared cancellation. It was always at the top of its game. It can end at the top. It can start at the top of the game, end at the top of its game, and hopefully it can just be one of those perfect 5-season shows.
I would hope so.
Live on. Yeah. I love that. And again, season 4 starts tomorrow. So I'm excited to see how that all goes down.
Yeah. 3 is just, I have to catch up on season 3 first. But I'm definitely curious to see how they continue the story.
Yep. Me too. They set up some interesting things in season 3. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on the season because they do some fun stuff there. How far into it?
I think I'm 5 episodes into season 3. I think.
Okay, so over halfway through. All right.
Yeah.
Not bad. But yeah, we're gonna be jumping into our main topic today, which is favorite fictional parents. Parents that we were talking about at the beginning, I think, are the cornerstone of any good story. Obviously, like who these characters' parents are is a partial of who they become in their later years. If that's good influences or bad influences. I think mostly today we're talking about good influences. Maybe someday I could do an episode where it's like the worst parents in fiction, just like the worst people.
But no, we're just tear into people.
I mean, those are probably the more iconic ones, right? The ones that are like, oh, you murdered 5,000 people. Okay, whatever. All the Game of Thrones parents or whatever it may be.
Oh no, I was just thinking Batman's an example of maybe not the best parent.
Oh no, yeah. I mean. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, we both picked out 5 parents that we want to shout out and talk about. And yeah, we're going to be jumping right into our first pick. And this first pick, I'm pretty sure, came from you, and that is Quentin Lance from Arrow. And I will say I love me some Quentin Lance.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, just the whole story that they had with him over the 6 seasons that he was there. I mean, you just constantly felt bad for the guy because I mean he lost one daughter twice. He lost once, and even so, even with everything he lost, he still his life went to complete and utter hell. But he still ended up turning himself around. Became a father figure to several different people in the team. I mean, beyond just the connections that he had with Oliver, which I thought were some of the best parts of the later seasons.
Yeah.
But you even got to saw he was kind of like a model for Wild Dog reforming himself too.
Sure.
That was another one, and of course, the other obvious one is turning the Earth 2 Laurel around, and turning her, kind of being the catalyst of her ended up becoming the hero that she did, and in the end of the 8th season, and of course that canceled spinoff that we won't see. But I always liked him, and I thought Paul Blackthorne as an actor just did an incredible job in the role, especially in the scenes where he's just kind of just pouring his guts out to people, or whenever he's getting angry or emotional. I mean, even though this is it's actually funny that you showed this picture. Even right after the scene where Laurel dies, like in the next episode, you see he's just kind of breaking down, and it's just hitting home. It really is, because he's just selling it with his performance so well. Yeah. And it, even though it's not, your kid that you just witnessed, he still made everybody feel the impact of what had happened. And he was just kind of that rock for Oliver in his later years, because even like in the middle of season 6, I think it was, whenever the whole team was disbanded and one after the other is leaving, he was still the one person who remained there the entire time. So I love the connection that those two had, because he hated Oliver for so long.
Yeah,
he despised him. He hated Oliver and he hated the Hood, and then by the end of the show, he ended up making both of those individuals into better people.
Oh, man. Yeah, Quentin, it's always very interesting whenever you visit early Arrow. And I was like, oh, yeah, you used to be a dick. Like, you used to kind of suck. And then watching his journey, I'd argue Quentin is one of the best parts of Arrow. I think Quentin almost has one of the best journeys throughout Arrow. Yeah. Like you said, losing his daughter, and then losing the other one, and then losing the other one again. Like it's just he's gone through so much, and I think Oliver did become like a son to him. And one of my favorite moments from the show is season 4. Weirdly enough, that moment when like Oliver finds out that he's working for Dark, and that was such a different weird. It comes out of season 4, and one of my favorite moments on the show.
Yeah.
But that hits differently because I think by that point Oliver has started to think of like Quentin as a father. After all they both have lost, they still got each other, and it was like that was such a special moment because it was like, I'm disappointed in you. I looked up to you like yeah, I could do all these bad things, but you were always that golden standard for me to look up to, and now you no longer are. Like that's such a special moment. Oh, it's so good. And yeah, no, I
weird that it comes from season 4.
Yeah, I know that. Oh my god, like there's moments from season 4. It's like, how'd you do this? You're surrounded by shit. How did you pull out this like amazing scene?
And then they even had, I think it was in season 6 during the wedding, where he says, he's like, you need to have a parent here tonight, and then he gives him the watch that his dad gave him when Quentin got married. It's like, that just hits. It really does.
And then even the final episode, it's him giving that final speech, right? Like at the funeral or whatever. So,
that final season. And the episode in season 8 where they do the time loop in Quentin's back, that's my single favorite episode of Arrow.
That's really good.
Bob Lightbone's Quentin is a big reason for that.
Yeah, that's... Whew. I mean, it's a great one. So I absolutely love this choice. Loved Quentin. It's always a joy. Again, it's so weird seeing his journey from the first episode to the last episode. It's like, oh yeah, you used to suck.
Especially in season 3, a lot of people did not like him.
No, and that's the thing. Like he definitely goes through these eras where maybe he isn't the best father. Like he goes through his drinking era, and there are scenes where how he treats Laurel probably isn't the best, but it does feel like he tries to be the best dad that he can, even when he fails. So I do love him.
What do you got for your first pick?
My first pick, and this is probably such a boring pick, I got Mufasa from The Lion King.
Oh, no worries.
I feel like Mufasa, out of all the ones I have on this pick, is just kind of like the golden standard of what a dad is. You know what I mean? Like, he's just everything. I feel like he's on every like Father's Day card. I feel like he's just like, oh yeah, who's like, what's the saddest Disney parent death? Like, I think Mufasa is usually the one that comes to mind. And Lion King's my favorite movie. I love Mufasa. He's obviously getting his own movie soon, which we will see how that goes, and we're kind of getting the legend. But I think there is a reason why he is so iconic and why he goes up there as one of people's favorite Disney parents, is just because I think they do such a great job at showing what a good father he is in such a short amount of time. Because you think that's a big chunk of the movie. He's not actually in the movie that long, right? He maybe has 10 minutes of screen time, and in that 10 like it's not a lot. It's not a lot of screen time. Oh. Like James Earl Jones is like one of my favorite voice actors of all time, and that the voice in my head is always just such a such a special one when I think about it, and his performance in the movie and how he kind of, I think, leads to Mufasa or Simba throughout the movie. Like the storm scene in the end where it's like, remember who you are, is probably one of my favorite scenes in cinema ever. Like, I think that scene's perfect. It's amazing. And I think it's just kind of a good, I don't know. I love the story of like looking up to your father and trying to do your best even when you fail. And I think there's such a, I don't know. I feel like in a scene like that where it's like, oh, like, am I being judged for not living up to your expectations? Where just remember your past, like take what you learned from me, the love I put into you, the love I gave you, and make it your own in a special way. And Mufasa is just one of my favorite Disney characters in general, so I had to throw him on here. And I'm really nervous for that movie. I'll say that right now. I'm so nervous.
I'm a little nervous for that too. But,
I'm excited, but I am so nervous.
I can definitely agree with putting Mufasa on here. And he was also, kind of that father that did the. He was the the mentor role in the hero's journey archetype whenever you're telling a story, because the mentor isn't always around long and gets taken out, but helps the hero grow while they're there, and B kind of after they're gone. Even kind of jumping into the Lion King too a little bit. Whenever Simba's like already king, he still goes to Mufasa for guidance, and like he still like wonders like, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I doing the right thing by letting the hell is his name, Kovu? Like, am I doing the right thing by letting him stay here, or am I seeing that he is too much like Scar? And so that kind of shows that just because Simba's in the king spot, he's not a perfect character. He still has flaws, and he seeks out Mufasa's guidance for that. So
yeah.
I mean, they even did something. I didn't watch a lot of this, admittedly, but what was that show that they had on
Line Guard? I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, the main character in that one. They even played a lot of Mufasa in that one. I think it was like every couple episodes, whenever the main character struggled, you could see him talking to Mufasa too. And I'm like, this guy has a lot of impact on people. Yeah,
sure. 100%. Yeah, no, I mean, it's the entire catalyst for the entire movie. Like, I think the movie does a really good job of showing, how little we actually see him leading the kingdom and being a good father and king. I think they do such a great job at showing that in other ways, even when he's off screen, like the impact he left on his kingdom, his people, the like loyalty that everyone had to him years and years after he died. I think is really, I don't know, it's a huge fan of him. And again, that movie, like, I think it could be amazing, but I also
and that whole loyalty deal you're talking about, I mean, as soon as he admits I killed Mufasa, you see everybody just charges at him.
I killed Mufasa.
Yeah. Man, great scene.
Yeah.
And,
I
don't think there's anything wrong for putting that pick on there, because it may be common, but it's also kind of like one of those gold standards too.
Gold standard, 100%. Yeah, they get the gold standard of like what a father should be, and obviously I love his like this is our kingdom. Everything to like touch. Yeah, it was like, oh my god.
And you can see him. You can see him kind of raising him up. He's like, you will take my place one day, so he's preparing him.
Three Dubs has one that he wants to shout out. I only have one that made on the spot, and that's Jonathan and Martha Kent from Smallville. I learned how to be a parent if I ever have kids. I agree. I don't think either of us have that on our list, but Jonathan Kent, especially this version of Jonathan and Martha, those are very high up on my list. Maybe if I ever do a sequel to this episode, I'll have to throw them on there. But also, just any version of Jonathan and Martha are usually pretty high on my list. I usually think they're pretty great.
Unless it's from the DCEU.
Yeah.
I really did not like. I mean, I enjoyed Martha in those movies.
I didn't have any issues with Martha. Yeah,
I really didn't like John Kent.
He also didn't have a chance either, though. He can't. I don't know. Like they. Yeah.
I mean, I thought Kevin Costner was well cast, but that's about it.
Yeah. But we also, like, with Smallville also, like, and that's the thing I think these CW shows go into, and we have a couple of people from the CW stuff on here, I think, but, like, you also get to spend so many episodes with them, like, compared to, like, DC movies or Marvel movies. You spend 22 episodes a season with them. For, like, Jonathan and Martha, for John, it was 100 episodes. For Martha, it was, like, 200. So, yeah, of course we're going to love them. But yeah, moving on to your next list or your next option here. Very similar, I feel like, Martha Kent and Jonathan Kent. Aunt May and Uncle Ben.
I picked the the Raimi versions of these two, but kind of like what you just said with with Jonathan and Martha, or really any version of them, but these are just the ones that kind of stick out to me in memory, because I mean just that scene alone where you took the picture from, and like you get a sense of who they are as characters, what their values are. And just looking around, this is more of like from a visual standpoint, but if you just look at the set of that place, it feels like you're walking into like this warm grandma's and grandpa's house where you feel like it feels safe. There's security there, you have people who care for you there, and that's helped by the way that those two characters are portrayed. And it's another thing where, again, Uncle Ben, doesn't really have that much time whenever you're doing a Spider-Man origin movie, but what he gives when he's there really hits a mark. And then Aunt May, I always love, especially in these movies, whenever Peter falls, she's kind of the one that brings him to earth and, kind of sets him straight. Because especially after he gets rid of the symbiote in the third movie, I think my favorite line from Aunt May in that whole series whenever Peter says, I hurt MJ, I don't know what to do, and she says, well, you have to start by doing the hardest thing. You have to forgive yourself. It's like, damn. Like it hits hard, but it's also one of the hardest things in this world to do as humans. So I really got a lot from that still. There have been other, good versions of Ant-Man and Uncle Ben. Well, really only one more for Uncle Ben in terms of live action. But I just think these two were, again, they were always really kind of impactful ones for me. And you saw just how loving they continued to be, even though, especially when Peter admits, I'm responsible for what happened to him. You can just tell, like, Aunt May was just so loving because he didn't want him blaming himself. She was proud that he came forward. It wasn't one of those soap opera responses where it's like, what? How could you do this? How could you lie to me? It wasn't anything like that. It was warm. And just that's what I really loved about it.
Yeah, I think parents like this are always very interesting because they're definitely, like, especially Uncle Ben, I think it is a lot less about them on screen and more about what they meant to the characters that we are watching. And I think especially with Uncle Ben, because it's usually about what he meant to Peter. And I think there's actually very interesting contrasted where it's like Uncle Ben made Spider-Man. Probably would not be a Spider-Man without Uncle Ben, or at least not the Spider-Man that we know. And I think Aunt May is always just that rock for Peter. Like, no matter what, he can come back to his roots and be like, this is what I'm fighting for. This is what I am. And I think when you have these two characters that are so important to Spider-Man, arguably the most important fictional character of all time, one of the most, fictional characters of all time, it does have a special place in your heart, and I do think this will probably always be my favorite Aunt May. Like, I think she is so good. There's that scene, I don't remember exactly how it goes or whatever, but there's that scene in the third movie. I know people don't like the third movie that much. I don't think it's terrible, but there's that scene where, like, they're having, like, the garage sale outside and stuff like that, and, like...
that's part 2.
Is it 2?
Yeah, the garage sale is part 2.
Okay, I'm just thinking, like, she inspires him to put the suit back on and...
after he gives it up, that's part 2.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think it was part 3. I guess that's why I love it so much, because I love Spider-Man too. But no, they're amazing, and even like the Spectacular Spider-Man probably has another one of my favorite versions of Aunt May and Uncle Ben. Mm-hmm. Aunt May more so, but like the Real Rejects have been watching through, and I've been kind of watching along with them, and I was like, like not for the first time, but I've been watching them go through it, and like there's that scene where Tombstone's like, hey, I want you to help me build this empire. We'll need you to protect me. And he's like, no, I will never stand by and watch on the sidelines ever again. Like,
it's like I can't look the other way again.
I cannot look the other way. You're right. And that's such a core part of who he is as a character. And it's great. I love them.
Yeah. Oh man. And even, with Spectacular Spider-Man, that whole symbiote flashback episode where you see the origin, was it a little bit derivative of what they did with Raimi's? Yes, but you just see again, how much he meant to them, and the fact that when they have that really cool visual where like he's in his mind, he's in that little pose, and you see all those different flashes of all the people that are important in his life, and they keep playing you those little clips one after the other, which was not because of Uncle Ben, it was kind of brought on. And it was followed up by him. So, I mean, that is another one where it's just great portrayals. And again, like Aunt May too. It was just another warm one where, I mean, I love in the first episode where she's, she's struggling with bills, but she doesn't want to tell Peter because he doesn't want him to worry. And then Peter's line afterwards, he's like, like a man has to honor his responsibilities, and you're one of mine.
Yeah,
it's so good.
So good. Yeah, it's another one of those where, again, like Jonathan and Martha, I do love them in almost every continuity. So I think that's just a tell when you've written or made iconic characters is when they can live throughout just one continuity outside of one adaptation. So amazing pick. Love this pick. I had put Aunt May inside the thumbnail before I even heard you wanted it in yours. So it was fate that Aunt May was on this list.
There we go.
Love it. All right, my next pick I got Stoic the Vast from How to Train Your Dragon. I guess I got a lot of animated people on my list today. This is, I think, is one of the most interesting ones on this list, because I do think at times he is a bad father, is the interesting thing about this one. Where, like, movie 1, you could have the argument that he is not a good father. He is kind of pushing his morals, what he wants, onto his son without asking him what he wants. There's a very bad line of communication between Hiccup and Stoic, and, you know, it's very clear that either one of them at the time are not great at communication. But where I love Stoic is, I think, what he ultimately, who he is underneath. Because I think at the end of the day, he is a man who's just trying to relate to his son, and he is reading like, oh, he wants to kill dragons. This is how I connect with him. We're going to put you through this thing, and this is how I do. This is what I'm going to be doing my best to protect you in this way. But what I love about it is, I do think when it comes down to The Wire, he was able to understand his son in a way that very few were able to do. And I think especially when we come to How to Train Your Dragon 2, I think the, like, dynamic between Stoic and Hiccup are very interesting, and we're able to see their dynamic being able to have grown between those 5 years, to the point where he's like, I've learned to trust you so much. I love you in this way. I want to now give you what I have built up until this point. I want you to be chief of Berk. I want you to have this, because I know you are responsible enough. I know you have what it takes, because you were able to do this thing that I was too stubborn to do for all these years. And I think his turnaround through the end of the first movie to the second is absolutely insane to me. Him realizing like he's a character that was able to step back and be like, oh, I was wrong. I made a mistake. Yeah. And you are the future. And I don't know, like I grew such an attachment to Stoic through the movies and through the TV shows and stuff. Like, he's still, in my opinion, one of the saddest fictional deaths I've seen. Like, that death scene just gets me in such a way. And I think it is very impressive, because again, through the first movie, he does kind of suck for the most of it. Like, you aren't necessarily rooting for him. So the stuff they were able to do through the back half of the first movie, the very end of the first movie, through the first half of the second movie, is just so good, in my opinion. I love Stoic.
I mean, even then, you can kind of tell that Hiccup had a sense of, kind of admiration for him, even though he was a bad father at points. Because I think whenever you hear that narration, and he's like, some people say that when he was a baby, he took a dragon's head off. Do I believe that? Yes, I believe that. So you can tell that he has a sense of admiration for the guy. And even though there is a very, like you said, a clear bad line of communication, he kind of grows over, I mean, especially from, like movie 1 to 2. Yeah. And he essentially went out through his, you kind of went on that journey with him, alongside the one that you were going on with Hiccup. It's like they were going into, it was almost like there were two different kind of parts of their goal that they needed to reach in that sense. Like, like they're going on this, journey together like this. I'm using this as like a physical demonstration. But if you split them, Hiccup needs to reach here, Stoic needs to reach here, and they did. Yeah. And I mean, I am admittedly not. I mean, I do enjoy those movies. I don't think they have as much of a resonance with me as they do with other people. Okay. That's not to say that they're bad movies at all, because they're not. Yeah. But I mean, they're one of the ones I probably will have to give a rewatch one of these days. But Stoic was definitely one of the standouts. For me, if nothing else, just for the way that Gerard Butler voiced him, I thought it was great.
He's so good.
His portrayal.
Yeah, and you also bring up a good point. It's like, he's also, it's so apparent how good of a chief he was, like similar to Simba. Like, his legacy lives on in such a strong way. Oh my gosh, there's that scene like at his funeral when he's like, how does one live up to such a man? How does one live up to such greatness? And you feel the weight of, because ultimately he sucks in the first movie, but also like he's doing what he, in his mind, he's just protecting his people. Like, he's doing what his father taught him and what his father taught him. Like, this is tradition to him, and he's doing whatever he can to protect his son, to protect his people. He's gone through like tremendous loss in his life, and I don't know. I love Stoic, and again, like he's so iconic. There's a reason why he's the only character coming back for like the new set of movies. Yeah, so like, he was that good. Yeah, like how do you? Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like how what they did with Mufasa whenever they brought it to live action. Who was the only one that came back to the movie?
Which, yeah, I mean, Mufasa is one of those, like, you can't get someone else to do Mufasa, I feel.
Yeah.
Like, Darth Vader is the same thing, where it's like, who else do you get for Darth Vader? It's tough.
I can't remember if, I think we brought up that cartoon a little bit, that Lion Guard cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like it was James Earl Jones in that from the little clips I saw. I don't know if it actually was. If not, it's a hell of a good impersonator, but it probably was actually him.
Yeah, maybe they, like, put the clips together to make it sound like, I don't know, they have that kind of technology now where it's like, you put this word here and this word here and this word here to make a sentence or whatever.
So that little visual metaphor you did there.
Yeah. All right,
man.
your next pick here, another CW character, Mr. Henry Allen.
Yep.
Oh, Henry.
Yeah, and this is the one I had told you prior. I expected to catch some heat for this one because I feel like a lot of people, when talking about the Flash, would probably put Joe here instead.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I don't know, maybe. So I think I personally connected to Henry on a lot of different levels. I had kind of a strained relationship with my dad, not saying he went to jail, but there was also just kind of that strained relationship there. We didn't really know how to communicate, and I think one of the best things about Henry is that he's trying to kind of drive Barry forward in the only way that he can, which he doesn't want Barry to be hung up on trying to get him out. He wants him to go on and live his life. He wants him to like fall in love, meet a great girl, like get a job that he really likes, have a career, have a life that's not nailed down by trying to get him out of prison, which is what was kind of Barry's main driving force for that whole 15 years. Was he's like, if I can just find one shred of evidence that the impossible is real, maybe I can find out who did this. And he was judged by that. He was judged for that by a lot of different people. Even Joe in the pilot, he says, like, you've been at this for a long time, but I've never asked for anything from you. And that was another good Joe line there, just for how they kind of built that on. But Henry really, and from like he was saying, if you're talking about like, I mean, probably the best part of season 1, or at least one of the better parts, is all those conversations that they had at the phone booth was some of the best parts of that season.
I agree.
And even in season 2, whenever he was out, he would come to Barry, or Barry would come to him rather, again, for advice. And it was another one of those parts at the beginning of season 2 where he wanted Henry to, stay around, but Henry's like, I can't hold you down any more than I already have. You need to actually, you need to actually, pardon the pun, run, so you can be kind of who you're meant to be. But Barry always fell back on Henry whenever he was really at his lowest. And kind of in that same vein, I mean, I know it's the same actor, but they kind of had Jay become that same figure too, whenever he was gone. And I guess I wanted to kind of merge Jay Garrick into there. It's just funny that it happens to be the same actor. But so you had Henry, who he taught Barry how to be Barry. Jay taught Barry how to be the Flash. So that's, I think, a really good way to kind of say that. And obviously, more than the stuff that Thawne/Wells taught. Like Jay taught him how to be a better Flash. Henry taught him how to be a better Barry. And even in, I think it's the mid-season finale where they where he finally figures out that it's the man in the yellow. He sees the man in the yellow, and Henry says, don't let him take any more from us, because like he knows Barry's going to go after him, but he just wants him to be safe. He wants him to be careful, and that is probably one of Henry's best lines. Is like I said, don't let him take any more.
I agree. Probably one of my favorite moments inside the show. There's that moment where Henry learns, like, he inside of him knows that Barry's the Flash, and he's like, "Are you the Flash? All right, okay, you're not the Flash, whatever. But if my son was the Flash, I would tell him how proud of him I am, and how you made this world a better place." I don't know the exact speech, but like that scene just makes me cry. I was just like, "All right, man!" Like that tweet. Like that clip will go around on Twitter like every couple of months and be like, look how good the show used to be. And I get a little annoyed sometimes with those type of things, but it's just like, Yeah, you're not wrong. Like
Yeah.
the show never got much better than that type of stuff.
Oh,
right
I mean,
there.
I'd say that was still probably the best season, but
Oh yeah.
and it's also just really cool from a legacy standpoint because you have
Yeah.
John
100%.
Wesley Shipp, who played Barry Allen, which is the Flash I grew up with. I still have my DVD set back there, actually.
Yeah.
But they and he goes into the role of Henry, and I think he's perfectly cast as Jay Garrick.
I agree.
But they just really, I'll fall back onto that same example that I used, where Henry taught him how to be Barry, Jay taught him how to be the Flash, and both of those people kind of they drove Barry forward instead of holding him back in the way that Henry at least feared that he would. But all of what Henry did for Barry was in ways bringing him further and not holding him back, because Barry wasn't going to be able to let it go no matter how much he was told otherwise. And they were like, let's help him do this, and he finally might get some peace.
Yeah.
And then enter Zoom, and yeah.
No!
That one still hurts. Still hurts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. John Wesley Shipp is a treasure.
Oh yeah.
And any role he played in the show, he was always kind of the father figure of the show. If it's Jay, if it's Henry, or even if it's Barry, he somehow
when he came back,
that father. Yeah.
Yeah. When he came back to Barry during Crisis in Elseworlds, and it was a big moment for me when I get to meet John Wesley Shipp last year. That was definitely
amazing.
A big special moment.
That's amazing. I love that. 3 Dubs said Joe taught Barry how to be Barry and the Flash and a husband to his daughter. Let's not get into that. We're not opening that cans of worms.
No, it's
3
been open
Dubs.
enough.
Bad 3 Dubs. Trying to get my channel canceled. How dare you?
Yeah, I know more people probably would have put Joe, but I just had to go with Henry.
Yeah, I mean, I love Joe's also a great. Like, I'm a big sucker for like a dad by choice type of situation. Like, I'm always a big sucker for that trope, and like, I probably would put Joe just slightly over just because of how much time we got with Joe. Like, every Joe speech in the show is just some of my favorite moments from the show as well. Like, I don't even like remember, but some of the stuff he had in season 1 was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And,
we're falling back to season 1 a lot, but it was really some of the best of this stuff.
Oh my gosh, like Flash season 1's probably my favorite season of TV to this day. Like I love that season so much.
For like Arrowverse and stuff, it's probably my number 2.
Okay.
It's just edged out so slightly for me by Arrow season 2. That's still my favorite.
It's also those are my top 2. I think they're
nice.
So good. All right, we got a couple more of these. My next one is Max Tennyson. Oh boy, look at me talking about Ben 10 again. This one's kind of interesting because I do feel like Max is very similar. I feel like there's a lot of comparisons to Max to even like an Uncle Ben character, and I feel like he's just a character that like single-handedly made Ben into the character that he is. And I've heard a lot of people say is like Max is if Uncle Ben didn't die, right? Like Uncle Ben would have been that. Yeah, that's kind of what he is. And I think especially in Classic, and I ultimately actually like the sequel stuff a bit more than Classic, just in terms of my entertainment. But I think Classic does such a great job at like forming who Ben is as a person, and the bond that they created in that OG is like you slowly, every episode it's Max kind of informing. And yes, the trope is that Ben forgets it the very next episode, and that can be frustrating. But he is instilling those ideas, these ideas of what it means to be a hero, what it means to be a good person. Why, Ben, why are you doing the thing you're doing? Is it for fame? Is it for fortune? Or are you trying to be a good person? And throughout that journey in Classic, I think there's a reason I think he's most people's favorite character within Classic, and then I think that's like accentuated in Alien Force when he's gone. Grandpa's gone, and now you have to take all those lessons that you've learned from him, and who are you 5 years out of being a hero? Take those lessons and like who am I? Who am I? What kind of hero am I going to be, and what am I going to do to get him back? And I think that's such a great arc that I feel like would be better if they were more consistent of how they wrote Ben throughout the show. Like, I do wish that he didn't revert back to the selfish kid from Alien 4 season 3 onward. That would be nice. But still, I think like Max is still just like consistently a great character. I think his moral compass is always so good, and I kind of like some of these other characters. I think they have such a golden standard for characters to live up to, or it's like, what would Grandpa Max do in this situation? And its characters having to live up to that standard, even if they do miss the mark. Like even like Omniverse, you'll have Grandpa being like, Ben, don't do that, or it's like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing that or whatever. So.
But I don't know. I always like Max, especially in classic. And I think probably my favorite line from him to Ben still is like, being a hero isn't about other people knowing that you did something good. It's about you knowing that you did.
Yep.
It's like that is really the core of what it comes down to, because like you're gonna like do stuff in your day-to-day existence. Other people are gonna have their own opinions on it, but you can't let that stop you. Let me try that again. You can't let that stop you doing from what you know is right. That's what I was trying to say. And it was just, I think that statement right there, Max was kind of just the living embodiment of that statement, because, like he would do, stuff that he would, know is ultimately for Ben's own good. Sometimes Ben wasn't the happiest about it. Sometimes other characters weren't the happiest about it, but he still, stuck to his guns because he knew it was right. He was that resilient. So it was just that I really, really appreciated about his character.
No. Some of my favorite moments of the show are surrounded by Max. There's one of my favorite arcs of the show is like the Ultimate Kevin arc, and I don't have you've seen the show through, right? I don't want to go into spoilers if you haven't.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, cool. Like there's that really good moment when obviously a lot of people don't like this arc, but Ben's on a rampage. He's like, I gotta take down Kevin. He's killing people. I gotta put him down. And there's that probably I don't know if that's my favorite, but it's up there where Grandpa, he's like in this tube, he's calling him, and he's like, hey, I heard what you're doing. Are you sure you want to do this? And he's like, I have to do this, Grandpa. Like this is what you would do. And he's like, yeah, I know. It is, but it's not a Ben move. And it ultimately, at the end of the day, he is not obviously taking out Kevin is what would be best for humanity. It's what a plumber would do. It's what he would have to do. But it's not what you would do, Ben. You would find a way around it. You would find a way to help the people. And like he knows these kids so well, and he's trying to protect them at all odds, way more than their parents ever did. I don't know,
their parents are not good examples of
that. No, like Grandpa, and I think that's why he's so good, because I think Grandpa is 10 times the parent than any of the parents in these shows have been. It's so good.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong there. And I think it was good that we had some Ben 10 representation here.
Yeah, I love it. Any chance I get the chance to talk about him, I was like, oh, let's throw him on here. We can talk about him. All right, next up we have Bob and Helen Parr, which was your next pick.
Yep. And
love it.
These two are just kind of, again, a little bit more of that gold standard goes like of what you want your parents to be, but also, there's a little bit more to it, because especially you see with Bob in these two movies, you see that he's very, very flawed.
Yes.
From an outside standpoint, they may look like the gold standards, because any kid would look at it and go, oh wait, you have superheroes as parents? That's awesome. But Bob is
totally wicked.
Good timing. But you were able to tell how, especially in the second movie, how flawed he is, and he goes through things that a lot of people that have kids are on, like they're trying to do like an impossible amount of things all at once. It doesn't seem comprehensible by any person's mind, but parents find the way to just get their act together and do what needs to be done. And I think the fact that you see his struggles as part of what makes him a really good parent, and the fact that he comes clean to his kids, and they help him, like they give him a break when it's warranted. They're a little bit rebellious, which kids are going to be. But just the scene where you really get to see all of his frustrations are it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the second movie, where he's he just snaps. He finally loses it. He's like, I'm trying to fix the boyfriend, I'm trying to do the homework, and I'm trying to stop the baby from turning into a demon. How do I do it? Because I'm rolling with the punches. And just that whole entire sequence where you can tell that's been building up for like the entire movie.
Yeah.
And like that's another one of those things that people kind of realize in their life, to where like sometimes our parents aren't as perfect as we need them to be. Like they are people like us, they make mistakes like us, and they I don't know, I feel like they just did such a good job with that. And then on the Elastigirl side of things, she definitely tries to do everything she can for her kids. She pardon the pun, she stretches herself to do like everything she can for them.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite scenes with her is in the in the first movie, whenever they're in that cave after they've just crashed into the ocean, and that whole sequence where she's like, "Hey, listen, like these guys aren't like those guys. Like these guys are gonna kill you if they get the chance."
Yeah.
And she's kind of taking the kids' shackles off, because she's always telling them to like hide who they are because it's not safe for them. It's like, now you can't do that anymore. And she kind of just it's almost like kind of that classic example of a mother bird letting them finally leave the nest, because they had to survive.
Yeah.
And just whenever all of those different arcs come together and they just converge together as a family, it brought a lot of different good feelings out of me. And I don't know, just those two together, like they butt heads when it comes to like, because everybody's gonna have like a different opinion on like what they think is best for their kids, especially I love just going back to that argument in the first movie where they have the whole thing. It's like, wait, like you knocked down a building? Just that whole conversation that comes out of that. It's a realistic argument, but I mean, which is I guess realism in a superhero movie may be a little bit of a weird subject, but you get a lot of real things from it. And it's not like it didn't feel soap opera either. It would feel like two people, if they were in that same situation, that's probably something that would come up at some point. So I've always just loved those two.
No, I think this is my favorite Pixar movie. I love The Incredibles. I'd actually argue it's probably one of the best superhero movies ever made. And I think sets it apart from every other superhero movie is it technically for children? I suppose, but I think it's one of the most realistic superhero movies that's ever been made. And I think the lengths that they're able to capture the idea of like, they are just like any other family. They fight like any other family. But what does that look like when you add the dynamics of superpowers into the mix? Like you're talking about that their fight inside the dining room. Like, to me, that's not like a kid's movie scene. That is just a scene in an amazingly written movie. And their arguments boil down to their children, how much they care for their children, and they're both trying to protect them and care for them in different ways, and they don't see eye to eye, and that is the realest thing ever. I love that dinner scene where like they're cutting the table and her arms going around the table. Like that is so brilliant. Like and that's real. Like that stuff happens in almost any family at any given time. That's like a real like representation of like somewhat, in some ways, a little bit of a broken family, and it's their way how they're trying to fix it throughout the movie. And I think they're amazing with how they do it. And I think, again, like there are times where maybe they aren't the best of parents, but kind of like some of the ones we talked about in the beginning, it's two people trying to do the best they can in the ways that they think they can. Like, Bob is like running away and lying to his wife and doing these shady stuff. Let's be real. He was doing some shady stuff. And Mrs. Incredible leaves them behind to find her husband. Like, there are actions here where maybe you could have done something different. But when it comes down to the wire, like everything with Helen and like protecting her kids and like oh my gosh, I shouldn't say love because that sounds bad, but like when the plane gets shot down and she's freaking out because like her kids are in this plane and like, like he's like, I have kids on board, and it's like Bob's reaction to him thinking that his wife and child just got blown up is like, oh my gosh, it's so good, and it shows how much they care. Oh my! And again, I don't consider this a kids movie. I really don't. Like, there's nothing in here that says, "Hey, it's made for kids." No, like kids can sit down and watch it, but they're not going to get. I didn't get how deep it was when I was a child, you only like it more as you grow up. I feel like.
Yeah. And that scene that you just said, whenever the plane gets shot down, you see what that does to Bob whenever he thinks that
Oh
they're
yeah,
gone. Because whenever Mirage comes back into the room and Bob is just like, he's not there anymore. Like
he's broken. Yeah,
he is just gone. And like that growl that he has to his voice, there's no like motion behind it anymore. He's ready to just choke that person until Elastigirl comes back into the room.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah,
Whew.
I think this is my favorite superhero movie. Like, there's like, it's like this and like the Spider-Verse stuff. Like, they're like right there for me. But
Oh yeah,
I
they're both
love
great.
Incredibles. They're phenomenal. Yeah. All right, my next choice. I got a lot of animated dads on my list. I'm just now realizing they're all animated. I got Uncle Iroh, and actually, like, there's another theme here. I feel like with a lot of my choices, there's not a lot of like biological fathers, and I feel like
A lot of like
I've
by
picked a lot.
choice, yeah.
Yeah, like I've chosen you type of thing. A lot of uncles. We got a lot of uncles, a lot of father, grandpas, and father figures. I feel like I don't even have to explain why Uncle Iroh's like the best. Like he took in Zuko when no one else would, when his father and his entire nation turned his back against him, and he spends like the majority of the series trying to protect this kid like he's his own. Obviously, like his like the arc learning what Zuko went through, how terrible of a person he was, and then his own son died, and then him kind of taking Zuko as his own. I don't know. There's so many moments. I actually, he's my favorite character from the Avatar series for these exact reason. I think he's just like the perfect character, and I think such a great job of how to redeem a character. Yes, we don't see a lot of the war crimes, but I think just a character that is trying to come back from doing something so terrible in his past is always so interesting to watch. And you know,
you don't always have to see what they've been through to see the effect it had on them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the scene exactly, but like, I think the show, like, it's Iroh kind of putting up with Zuko's bullshit because I think he knows he kind of has to go through that journey on his own a little bit. And then there's the point when he's in the cave and he's trying to stow off, and he's like, "Stop it! You can't do this, Zuko. You are destroying yourself." And it's this moment, and Zuko has to choose, like, do I listen to him or do I not? And at the end of the day, he does like betray his uncle, and then that moment in like the final episode where he comes to Iroh and he's like, "Uncle, I'm so sorry, I betrayed you," and he's like, he doesn't care, he just hugs him instantly because he knew he finally made the right choice. It's just like, all right, you got me again, show. Yeah, he's the, like, for me, like, Avatar's a perfect show, and I think he's the beating heart of the show, and eventually he does kind of just become the father to all the characters at some point. He just kind of like adopts them all as like, "Yep, you're mine now. Let's come."
That's one thing I really liked about that. That's something I really liked about that is he just became very, or not became, I guess he kind of always was. He was very, just sage-like in the way that he spoke. Trying to put people on these paths that are gonna not have them end up, being self-destructive, because that's what a lot of the people were kind of heading down ultimately if he would have not gotten involved. But also, he's just, I like the simplicity of his character a lot, too. The fact that he has these very, like, pedestrian kind of goals. He's like, after I conquer this place, I'm going to get my tea shop back, and I'm going to, like, play Pasho every day. It's like, this is simple stuff that just gives characters identity.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of stuck out. It's like, you don't need to throw all these traits to make a character who they are. They can be surprisingly really layered with, even though they don't have the most into them.
Yeah, and I think there's even like double layers to it all as well. Like with the in real life actor obviously passing away, and him singing that song, I think was one of the last things he worked on for the show. Is such a, I don't know, it feels like a tribute. And I think the actor had also lost a son in his life, if I'm not mistaken. It feels like there's almost correct, like there's like a feels like a double narrative about fatherhood and what it means to be a father. And like we said, like, you don't have to be blood to be a father. And he was Zuko's father. He was 10 times the father than his father ever was. So and even in like a new show that just came out, I didn't love everything about that show. I thought there was a lot of things I didn't like. But what I think it nailed was the Zuko and Iroh stuff. And I think they were able to like accentuate that and build upon what was already there. which I appreciated. Like, if the show did nothing else, it gave me a little bit more of Zuko and Iroh, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of the new series too, because I had a lot of problems with it.
I did as well. There was things I did. There's a lot of things I loved, but there was a lot of things that did not work for me either. But
yeah, I'm not gonna rant about all that.
Yeah. Uncle Iroh was never a bad. Oh, sorry. Uncle Iroh was never bad. He had to be bad to not break his cover. Yeah, I mean, he still killed like thousands of people.
Yeah.
So, like, he's still like he's not innocent in any way. But you know,
I mean, the Fire Nation aren't good people.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, like, are you bad for following orders? Like, that's a whole conversation that I don't know if we have time to get into, but
Probably not.
that's, you know, but like, you know, he went through, and like, even if he didn't do anything bad, like, let's say you're like, no, he didn't do anything bad, he still believes he did. Like, he still went through that journey himself to like redeem himself, even. So
yeah, and even if other people were to look at it and believe he wasn't bad, he's still not going to be able to move forward with himself if he believes he did.
Yep, and I actually love, like, I feel like they dived more into that, like, within the live action. Like, we got to see people being like, my kids are dead because of what you did, and him having to, like, sit in that filth for a little bit. I thought was, like, a great, something great that they did. So, yeah, it's, oh my gosh. I think this is your last choice here, which is Molly and Arthur Weasley. Want to talk about them for a couple of minutes?
These would be mine, you know, kind of like what you were talking about with kind of the theme of years. These were kind of like parents by choice, you know, because they took Harry in when, you know, but before this, Harry had pretty much no parental figures. You know, you might be able to make an argument for Hagrid, but these guys, like, they brought him into their home. They kind of chose him, and, you know, he really did not like, he was willing to give whatever he could to them, but Harry didn't want anything back in return. And that's kind of like the special things about those, you know, those parents by choice type thing, because he wanted to give them so much because, you know, like, they were poor, they had a lot of kids to look after, and, you know, and on the other side of the spectrum, you had Harry as somebody who, you know, had this big fortune that he admittedly didn't do anything for because it was his parents. And he just kind of wanted to give it away as much as they could, but he did it in kind of these under the table ways. Like, whenever he heard that they were, you know, struggling to pay for books or whatnot, he would literally slide like money under the table to Ron and just say, "Use this, I'll get my own." And I don't know, they were always like so loving toward him too. You know, like, no matter, and not even just to Harry, you know, like, to their whole family, really. Like, they really did their best to make ends meet, but it also wasn't like what you saw with a lot of other wizards in that world who were very, you know, very spoiled. You know, like, they, you know, pardon the, I guess the pun, they were born with silver wands in their mouth, I guess you could call it, in this instance. But it was just like they always kind of felt like what you would think a loving, functional family would like, and even though like they always kind of struggled to make ends meet, they still ended up doing that. And whenever some of the people in that family are in danger, or, you know, even when some of them sadly die, it still hurts a little bit. You see the effect that it has on them. It's like they want nothing more than to protect their kids, and they include Harry and even Hermione into that mix as well, just because of how close everybody ended up being. But I don't know, I think one of my favorite lines regarding them isn't really something that they did, but just I don't even think this is a movie scene, but whenever Harry first arrives to their house in the 6th book, and he's just kind of, you know, brought in, like, they're so happy to see him, you know, like they give him like a plate of soup, and Harry's just feeling so content and safe, but not in the way that he's like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm having the best life. He's like, wow, these people really care about me, because let's face it, you know, his aunt and uncle would be candidates if we did a worse version of this list. So he didn't really have anything like that before, so he got to experience what good parenting is like.
I remember from them. I remember them being like a shining light in his life when he didn't have many of those. So Yeah, that's a great pick. And again, like I think our main theme here is probably like found family, or not by blood but by heart, I guess, if you will.
I think over half of these total picks are ones that are by choice.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And that kind of goes into my final pick here as well, which some biological stuff going on here, but some by choice as well. And that's Pat and Barbara from Stargirl. Now, I knew I wanted to pick one CW. Like, I try to mix it up when I choose the thing. I don't want them to be all from one genre or whatever. I was like, all right, I get one CW parent here. I was like, all right, I could do Joe. I could do Superman. I could do Black Lightning. Like, there's a lot of actually really good parents within the world of like the CW and stuff like that.
Yeah, for my second one, it was honestly Superman was a contender.
Superman's really good. I almost wanted to go with him. He's a great father.
Yeah. I think maybe once we see how that series ends, we'll get a better idea of it.
Yes. And I think Pat and Barbara, Barbara's great. But I think especially when I think of Pat is such a... I think that's the fundamental core of Stargirl. And especially in that first season is just like the dynamic of Courtney and Pat. And I've talked about Pat a couple times on this channel. Like, I often pick him when we do kind of games like this, just because he's just one of my favorite fictional characters. But I think, because it's weird, because often I don't like that trope of the, like, I got a new stepfather, and oh, he's not my real dad. Like, that's not a trope I love. Yeah. But by the end of the season 1 arc, when it's come full circle, and I'm just like, fuck, man, this is so good. And like, Pat is just the perfect dad. And my favorite episode of Stargirl, I talked about this in our favorite characters episode, but there's that moment when her real father comes in here, and he's just wanting the bracelet, he's just wanting like the necklace, he just wants the money, he's out of here, and obviously he's the one that comes out of her like, hey, never come back here. And then there's a moment where he comes back in, it's like, hey, I know I'm not your real dad, hey, I know, you know, we've had our differences, but if you need someone to talk about, you need a hug, and there's that embrace, and like, that's the true moment she becomes Stargirl, is like by accepting her new true family. And oh my gosh, it's so good. And at the end of season 1, where she calls him dad, you have the season 3 thing where like Sylvester's in here. She's like, well, maybe Sylvester's my actual father. And that thing of like, no, you actually were never my father. I now realize that my real father was here this entire time, and he's 10 times better than you could ever be. And it was just like, this is the heart and core of the show, is like that dynamic between Pat and Courtney. And not only that, I think also Pat and Barbara do become the parents of like literally every character in the show. Like, every character has terrible parents, and they're all like, just come with us. Like, we'll be your new parents. Like, they came to a point where I was pitching like, let's just get like a hotel and just foster all of these kids, or just get a giant mansion and just adopt them all, because they all need parents.
Yeah, it's kind of like Iroh in that sense.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. But then what you were talking about too, I think one of my favorite instances with Pat, where she's talking to Courtney, it's like whenever Courtney's doubting herself, so when, you know, like her friends have, you know, been like, they've all been taken, and, you know, and the whole thing with Barbara is like, you can do this, like, be Stargirl for them, because they need you. So it's not one of those things where like you're just doing it to better yourself. It's like, there's people who are counting on you, and, you know, once in a while you need those kind of conversations that where, you know, like, okay, listen, just get your shit together, because this needs to get done. And, you know, like, there's not aggression behind it, but there's like assertion behind it, like where, you know, that these characters care for each other, and, you know, like, you obviously can see the effect that Courtney has on Barbara, and she's just trying to kind of raise her up with a little bit of tough love, just to know what needs to be done.
Yeah. And
Pat is, again, you know, he was, again, one of my favorite characters in all of Stargirl, honestly. Because I don't know, just kind of what we were talking about before with, you know, with Bob and Helen, to where, like, you know, they're not always, you know, on eye to eye about everything, but the arguments that they have, and kind of the times that they do kind of come to a head, they're realistic, and they're not soap opera-y like you would see on a lot of the CW. So it was kind of a nice breath of fresh air as far as that was concerned.
Yeah. I always also loved Pat, because I always felt like, I feel like with parents on superhero shows, it sometimes feels not weird, but like, even like Black Lightning, like, there was always the element of like, I don't know if realistically he would let his children just go out and fight crime in a certain way. And I always felt like Pat always kind of wanted about it, where it's like, I'll never have you go out and do something that I'm not willing to do myself. Like, I love I think it was a pilot where he's like, no, you cannot go and do this. I am going to go and take care of this. And if I don't come back, call the police. And he's always kind of putting himself like before the kids. He's always able to risk his life. And he has almost died countless times because of this. And he's willing to risk it every time because of how much he loves these kids and the things he's just instilled from them from the very start. I love Pat. And also Barbara. Like, I don't mean to short Barbara because she's also really good. It's just Pat feels like she is more of a focus than Barbara often does.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. You know, Barbara definitely still has her moments, but it is kind of more centered on Pat as far as the parental dynamics concerned.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and I would have loved to have seen more of them. That's I think this is the CW show I missed the most out of all of them, unfortunately. But,
I feel like the one I'm probably going to end up missing the most is Superman, but for now, this is probably it.
Sure. Yeah. I'm already sad it's heading towards its end. It's crazy.
I just hope it doesn't feel rushed. I hope they can end it in the best way they can.
I'm hoping. Yeah, it's a couple months away. We're almost at that finish line.
It's October, right?
We've heard fall, so September, October, November, one of the three.
One of those, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with that being said, that kind of takes us to the end of our episode. I want to give a big shout out to Joypad Jake. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you want to shout out or promo?
I guess as far as what I'm going to be working on currently, I told you now that I've kind of been on a little bit of an editing binge, and I'm going to be getting a lot of my stuff uploaded out. Of course, you know, a lot of my channel is like not only is it game oriented, it's also comic related. But I'm kind of going to be mixing those two elements for a little bit. You know, talking about some characters that maybe could use a better game to themselves. Some that haven't had a AAA game yet that could benefit from one.
Sure.
Going over some of the maybe not so good ones that we've had over the years, some of the underrated ones, but I also do a lot of games that are retros that I make full-on reviews of. So I'm definitely going to be pumping those out a lot more, now that we've kind of gotten into summer.
Hell yeah. I love to hear it. Go check out all that. His links should be linked down below. And then, me, same as always, we have our Monday show where we were talking about all the TV shows that come out throughout the week. It's a crazy time for TV stuff. So if we got House of the Dragon starting this week, got The Boys, we have Doctor Who, and My Adventures with Superman. And we got a lot of shows going on right now. I'm very excited for that. A lot of shows. And then Pipeline should be back next Thursday. Next Thursday, I think we're doing our Inside Out episode. Inside Out 2 comes out tomorrow, and I'm so excited to fully dive into that. Hopefully next week, if all goes according to plan. And with all that being said, I will see you guys on the flip side. Bye-bye.